Hello and welcome. This is the last of the standalone evolutionary service groups, the creative workers, I'll be discussing. We'll start with a quote from Albert Einstein: "Creativity is intelligence having fun." Creative workers group is connected to the third aspect of divinity, active intelligence. The other two aspects are will and love. Together, these three aspects of God express creatively through mankind. Through active intelligence, the creative workers creatively blend life and a physical creations with a philosophical orientation. Through their work, a magical process transpires on the physical plane by blending spirit, life, and matter form creatively, and in so doing they become a vehicle for the divine plan to appear. It is the hierarchy of masters who provide the themes and ideas for creativity and expression and for enabling the divine intention. The creative worker is ideally soul-conscious and draws his inspiration from a world of illumination, that of pure light and love. He receives a divinely inspired idea and precipitates it to the outside world through his creative work. He does this by keeping in alignment with the inner source of power while never taking his mind away from the group objective. The creative worker's work is primarily philosophical and concerned with scientifically and factually relating the other evolutionary service groups so that the creative work is accomplished on the physical plane. Also known as the Great Synthesizer, this group links ideas into creative expression for bringing the divine plan into manifestation. As a result, a synthesis is achieved. The fine arts are the most obvious form of creative work, as it is a way that members of society expresses its values and beliefs in a creative way through dancing, music, literature, plays, movies, and artwork. But creativity is not just limited to the arts. With its expression, they stimulate and bring new aspiration to the hearts of men so that the good, the beautiful, and the true may be greatly increased and recognized, regardless of expression. Their energies will bring forth a new creative era. With a sense of the Aquarian ideals, the creative workers will employ a mental soul-inspired style by synthesizing words, color, music, and sculpted forms from many diverse sources to create manifestations of beauty. This will open the hearts and minds of men to think and to create new forms with new ideas. Creative workers facilitate the expansion of culture by working directly with the creative expression of the mind and the will as an act of world service. In essence, creative work is an outward creation of a thought or idea made manifest. In today's world, they are closely related to the financial service group who are supplying funding and money through the manifestation related to the energy of desire. This is the energy that brings about the materialization of things and allows the work of the hierarchy to be brought forth to humanity. They regard money as a means whereby divine purpose and the building forces of the universe can be carried forward. So who are the creative workers? The creative workers express through the unfolding of the creative nature through the right use of heart and mind. And this allows them to create and develop their capacity for intuition, registering ideas, responding to impulses, and creatively building forms from revelation. As the artist receives an inspired idea, he precipitates to the outer world through his creative work. He does this by holding in alignment with the inner source of power, that is, soul inspiration, while never taking his mind away from the higher objective, that is, manifesting the plan. Art is a way the artist expresses values and beliefs in society in a creative way. The creative workers work in all fields where creativity happens. Exoterically, the creative group creates literature, music, dance, sculpture, works of art, and architectural design across a myriad of professions. There is creative expression of thought in literature, broadcast journalism, financial investments, such as fundraising, crowdsourcing, to meet an immediate need for an individual or group. The creative artist reduces an ideal to an idea and then concretizes it. For example, furniture is designed so that it is attractive, functional, and affordable. In the mid-20th century, for example, the creation of lamination, pressed board, and simulated wood panels was created into a type and style of furniture. With this example, the ideal was and still is for the creating of business enterprises that create things of beauty and that are functional for society. The creative worker's purpose is not just to see art in its own visual representation, but for the artist to depict problems of society or in society through an abstract medium. An example of an abstract art was depicted as an anti-war painting by Picasso in 1937, when he created the painting Guernica. It is an abstract image of a conflict in Spain in the 1930s by Franco. What we can consider with this expression of art is that art is a product, and that we should ask, what is the artist wanting to say through his or her medium? With this particular work by Picasso, art is not just something that is put on canvas, but is seen in poetry, literature, music, the visual medium, to honing techniques for learning something, such as the art of listening, the art of making something, or fine wordplay, etc. We also find creative artists working in the fields of city planning and architecture for creating beauty in form, such as building, construction, and landscapes. They are motivated by the concept of beautification of cities, workspaces, homes, and environments. Their work creates neighborhoods that are sustainable and help foster social or community engagement. Examples of this can be parks, waterfronts, walking trails, forests, and sports fields, as they provide areas for people to exercise, relax, and socialize. For this, social psychologists have long understood that interacting with nature can improve a sense of well-being, cognitive performance, memory, and creativity. It is also not surprising that regularly visiting places in nature can lower depression, improve sleep, reduce stress, and bring about greater levels of happiness. A world-renowned example of beautification of a landscape was in the early 20th century of the conversion of a limestone quarry near Victoria, British Columbia, and it was converted into what is known today as the Bouchard Gardens. Numerous examples of nature's beauty is accessed through parks, botanical gardens, hiking trails, and treks such as the national park system in the United States, or sectioning off large areas, for example, in Africa, for maintaining natural habitats for animals. Let's talk about some of the basic qualities of creative workers from an esoteric perspective. In Alice Bailey's book, Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 1, the Tibetan DK says hierarchy looks for 4 basic qualities that spiritual workers on the spiritual path must master. Practicing these qualities will enable an individual to interrelate intelligently with members of other service groups. And they will do this through sensitivity. This is sensitivity to the voice of the teacher via telepathy or impression. And one might ask, do you feel the vibration of the master or the guide? Or does your own feelings interfere with the higher sensitivity? At first response, do you feel love or compassion? Or do you inhibit the display of emotion, and why do you do this? Another quality of the creative worker could be impersonality and detachment. And this refers to whether a person's attitude is reactive or responsive to new ideas or impressions. Ask, do you react or respond through a natural innate quality or through training? Do you handle problems from a mental level? Another quality of a creative worker might be a psychic capacity. And this refers to the capacity for registering an intuitional response to ideas and impressions. And this can be heart knowledge and intelligent response to real needs, such as employing the higher mind and not the solar plexus. Tibetan Master DK says that right observation from the soul level is done with right mental perception and freedom from illusion. This would be a correct manipulation of force to show an understanding of the various types of qualities of force and the right creative weaving into service. Also, the worker would demonstrate a true comprehension of time by sensing the right time for action and engaging in his activity. The 4th quality the hierarchy would be looking for creative workers is mental polarization. And this infers a constant orientation to life from an angle of the soul and holding an attitude of meditation throughout the day. So let's turn now to creativity and synthesis in civilization in the political and economic sectors. Looking at the big picture of civilization, a synthesis or working together of the political and economic activity is happening, and indeed through many of the other evolutionary groups. It is working out in the microcosm through individuals, groups, and corporations at the national level. Considering the implementation of the plan, this activity represents an interface between the hierarchy through impression and humanity creatively working together in synthesis, although not necessarily consciously. With the anchoring of purpose and the will aspect in civilization, the hierarchy impresses all aspects of the plan so that the individuals and groups can carry it out through creativity in life's activities. The Christ, the hierarchy, and the soul act as dynamic agents for defining relationships between individuals and groups, nations, and economic alliances. By practicing goodwill and cooperation, this creates a synergy and affects the success of all the 10 evolutionary service groups. On the theme of creativity, through the Political Observers on Financial Services Group, the economy thrives when the creative workers are successfully employing the energy of synthesis. They are bringing people and ideas together and creating alliances for enabling a certain project in politics and economics to become manifest. Let's talk about some examples of creativity in the political observers field. Individuals who are sensitive to impression are energized and employ the energies of will and purpose. So the energy of will energizes individuals for invoking cooperation, bringing people together, and creating harmony between groups within society. Ideally, the will to good is stepped down by politicians as they enact legislation and allocate monies for programs or projects that benefit society. During crisis and wars, individuals and groups gradually awaken to the idea for wanting a better way of living, not just in a material sense, but security and justice for all. This idea results in invoking the will to peace through rhetoric by spokespersons, NGOs, and their activities, through literature, broadcast, etc. People in the political organizer service group must become creative in diplomacy by influencing physical plane organizations with ideas and thought forms of cooperation and goodwill through legislation and allocation of funds toward making projects that make peace a reality. With political governance, this helps to bridge the gap between the inner plane knowingness and outer plane physical governance. Through hierarchical intention, impression is being sensed and worked out by creating circumstances for right relations to work out between peoples and nations. The United Nations and its various agencies helps humanity deal with consequences, conflict, and with cultural and intellectual developments within civilization. Their work indicates an increasing alignment with hierarchical intent, such as the need for compassion for aiding refugees, minorities, protection of the environment, and promoting education, medical, and health care for all. Speaking now of economic dynamics, creativity in the economic sector happens by people that are motivated by the principle of sharing and are helping to enable the principles of giving and right distribution of goods and services to those in need. This is done by individuals and groups whose minds and hearts are carrying out the right distribution of resources and not hoarding. This will ultimately lead humanity to realize there is divine intent behind economic activity. Microloans and microlending is a creative method of issuing small loans to small business owners, particularly in developing countries which may not have access to traditional financial products or financial institutions. Instead, these small businesses work through non-traditional loan service channels to secure financing needs. With shifts and changes in the world economy, people's attitudes are reevaluating economic practices and activities and the role of money and the distribution of resources around the planet. These are often considered at the governmental level. Eventually, money will be seen as energy, as thought made manifest for stimulating those activities within civilization that promote life and the welfare of society. As humanity undergoes the first initiation, also known as allowing the Christ principle to govern the heart and the mind and allow the Aquarian principle of sharing to guide the personality, will be reconsidering the need for consumer products. The individual may ask, do I really need this particular product? An understanding will come forth about sharing of products and services and about how resources can be better used. From this, the workers in the financial service group will evaluate consumerism and determine and creatively provide right resource allocation of resources. This doesn't have to be complicated, but the idea here is whether the soul is guiding one or not in his or her decision. Practicing ethics in business and sustainable techniques in business practices and consideration of the environment will become the norm in the right use of resources. This is all a form of creativity too. This will result in a corporate environment and culture to change in organization and functionality. Let's talk about a esoteric understanding about how chakras are influencing creative activity in the individual. For this discussion, I refer you to two podcasts from my book, The Way to Soul Consciousness, and on the particular sections or the podcast called The Human Constitution. You can also reference my book of the same title, The Way to Soul Consciousness, and it can be purchased on sacredteachings.us. Here, the Creative Workers Service Group links and blends life and form creatively through creative work and in the response to the thought world and the life aspect. Through philosophical expression, they relate with the other 9 groups, factually and scientifically, so that their creative efforts together synthesize a divine plan into existence. Actual creative energy is employed not just by members of the creative service group, but also used by members of the other 9 evolutionary service groups who work with the head, the heart, the sacral chakra at the base of the spine. The centers of creativity involved are the head and the base centers that work together to connect with the divine will as expressed by the creative individual. The heart brings the energy of love, sense of beauty, and the balancing of a recognition and synthesis of all ideas and viewpoints. The sacral energy coming from the second chakra provides a drive for regeneration, it's linked to reincarnation, that is, the birth of new things, and changing the form nature, the physical plane substance, from one form to another. When the individual is motivated by spiritual awareness, the sacral energy redirects the raw sexual energy for creation and expression through the throat center. So this becomes the second center and the 5th center together, the 2-5 connection. Creative energy can be derived from inspiration, from the form of artistic creations in music, painting, and it can be used for building structures. The inspiration or creative spark is the means for making a project come to fruition. Creative workers work in the financial service group as they concretize the energy of desire, that is, the sacral energy for creating things into creative ideas, and it's done through the throat center, which is the throat of expression and creativity. This involves them in fundraising and the need for money. In the Aquarian era, members of the scientific, educational, and psychologist service groups will come to study and understand these dynamics. Now let's turn to a very different subject, that crisis and need spawns creativity. We'll start with a quote from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Art is not a treasure in the past or an importation of from another land, but part of the present life of all living and creative peoples. There is nothing new about an artist feeling conflict at the mental and emotional level prior to or during the creation of their art. Van Gogh, Picasso, or even Glenn Miller were 3 such examples who felt tension and stress. There are thousands of others, of course, in history. Here we're not just talking about the artist who paints or sculpts, but includes anybody who is wanting to create something but struggles to define their work, which in essence is taking an ideal, reducing it to an idea. Finally, he or she completes the work as a concretized thought form in whatever creative form. Here are some examples of human creativity responding to crisis. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many artists creatively produced works that served as therapeutic release. They documented the moment and helped to shape public opinion. For example, some artists created raw, authentic pieces processing emotions like anguish and hope, while others captured poignant moments and emotions through photography, painting, etc., that stood as a visual record of the era. One example of COVID art, so called, was done by an artist who creatively painted masks on the Statue of Liberty, the Mona Lisa, and a self portrait of Van Gogh. Art is expressed through painting, plays, music, and dance, as we've said before, and it can invoke feelings of transformation and renewal. And this type of art can be challenging for the viewer because it exposes and provokes raw emotions. In essence, art has the power to motivate and provide hope even in times of suffering and trauma. At the Artur Museum in Istanbul is an example of artwork depicting emotion and trauma, or non-verbalized emotions, or that which cannot be verbally expressed. It is part of an exhibit by the artist Yehuit Sasporas. This art exhibit is designed to speak to the depth and the collective unconscious, demonstrating a vital role that artists play in revealing the unseen individual and collective human trauma. Historically, crises like wars, natural disasters, and economic downturns have fueled bursts of creativity and artistic movements. For instance, conceptual art critiquing systems of power and consumerism can also act as catalysts for novel thinking when conventional approaches are ineffective. From these and other examples, personal crises like life-threatening illnesses, job loss, or accidents can increase one's creativity by improving relationships, seeing opportunities, and gaining new perspectives. The feelings of distress from traumatic life events are associated with creative expression in areas around problem solving, writing, and entrepreneurship. Overall, we understand that crisis for developing new ways of thinking when usual approaches fail, prompting extensive searches for creative solutions through risk-taking, experimentation, and leveraging diverse skills and perspectives. Let me also provide some examples of art in times of crisis which can bring public awareness to a particular subject. Art can bring about social change by creating awareness about prisoners of conscience and political activists. Art can depict traumatic events, as we talked about, such as people's emotional response, such as around 9/11. Hundreds of paintings during the Renaissance period depict the effects of plagues and pandemics. And that was done, for example, by Bruegel, the artist Bruegel. And art also informs the public about AIDS, for example, in the 1980s, through massive tapestries that were woven together. There's an artist known as John Sabra, known as the toxic artist. He's a Buddhist who finds beauty through photography from polluted areas on Earth, and his work brings attention to the problem. There's many other examples of this, but we'll go on. Let's turn to other real-world examples of creativity in the world. The Tibetan master DK said regarding the expression of art, "Idealism affirms imagination and attempts to realize an emotional and mental conception of beauty, a standard of perfection juxtaposed to aesthetic naturalism and realism." In the last 60 years, there's been a renaissance in how creativity is expressed in society. The most obvious expression in this service group is through their artistic and creative expression through the fine arts. So in our example, we're talking about is theater, dance, music, literature, film, multimedia, and other works of art. New art forms of beauty, art, and music will reflect a fresh expression by creative artists, such as creative work in collaboration with developing technologies in communication, in the visual arts, lighting and sound and imagery, etc. Clothing and jewelry is art. Furniture creatively designed to be attractive and functional. Building and landscape architecture, that is, transforming empty urban spaces into community gardens and xeriscapes. The development of sustainable technologies through wind, solar, water power, using different technologies as a creative source. Using materials and devices in building and construction technology to make it more efficient. In horticulture, creativity in growing. Garden cultures develop in many large cities, growing gardens on roofs in urban areas. There's the creative use of irrigation and growing techniques in horticulture and xeriscapes. the creative interior and exterior design with lighting, appearance, and placement of objects. There's also creativity in YouTube, which features short videos on the functionality of a device through how-to shows in cooking, singing, playing an instrument, or repairing a device. Creativity is also expressed through literature and also in other arts, such as through poetry. Poets use language creatively to evoke form, rhyme, metaphor, emotions, and create vivid imagery. In rap, the musical expression of rap, a modern form of poetry, rap combines rhythm, wordplay, and storytelling. It often addresses social issues, personal experiences, and cultural themes. In plays, plays involve or explore human relationships, societal issues, and emotions through characters, dialogue on a stage. Scripts that are creatively written for TV or movies. The script writers craft dialogue, scenes, and plot lines for television shows and movies, and they blend creativity with practical considerations for visual storytelling. There's people that write memoirs. Individual writes narratives for creatively recounting their own experiences, memories, and reflections in an artistic way. And I'll close with the last one being AI or artificial intelligence, and it's used for creating imagery and text. One of the newest forms of creativity is not necessarily or directly originating from man per se, but from a computer algorithms based on queries by an individual. Through AI programs such as ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, and others, an individual can enter questions or text scenarios into a text or image generator to create a new way of looking at an idea or an image. And it should be said that the actual generated text or image by this method is raising issues of what is original or computer generated. This completes the podcast for the creative workers.